There's no organ in the body where you ever would say, let's injure it for the sake of it coming back stronger and better.
Today, I'm sitting down with Dr. Dennis Gross, a leading dermatologist and skincare expert, to explore how science can transform skin health. Together, we'll dive into the breakthroughs that are making healthier, glowing skin accessible to everyone.
I've had 15-year-old, 14-year-old girls coming into my office, young women coming into my office who want this and that and literally will show me a photo of somebody. I love her lips. I want her lips.
What are some ways that we can treat fine lines and wrinkles that are not Botoxed?
LED is a game changer, 1000%. It's really smart to use major building blocks of skincare, the pillars, and mix it in with treatments in the office. There's an acceleration of effect that comes from the combination of different kinds of ingredients and products. We're touting it and getting great results by using a retinol boosting, perfectly dosed pad twice a week, mixed in with the alpha beta peel. The skin loves that.
Red light is definitely having a moment, and there are so many red light products out there. So what should people be looking for in red light?
So the first thing I would say,
Dr. Dennis Gross.
hello
Welcome.
there. Hi, Ariel. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I'm sure you need no introduction with my audience. You are an icon, and I'm really honored to have you here. So I would love to start out just by talking to you about your experience in the industry. You've been in the industry for so long. I'm sure you've seen all the trends come and go and all of the innovations. And I'd love to hear just from your perspective, how both the industry and how beauty standards have changed and are changing now.
Right. So I don't think you could pick a more complicated industry right now, especially than the beauty industry in general, right? And I mean everything from procedures to skincare products, planning, customizing, sorting out the confusion, finding out what's in your heart as a person who looks at his or her skin and decides like what they need. It's an incredibly emotional experience, journey. And so what am I seeing? I think that, first of all, the first thing I would say to people is, take your time and understand that it's confusing and really educate yourself. There is a way to educate. And that's sort of what is a big part of what I feel is my calling, is to talk about these issues. And the first thing I think starts by knowing what you're seeing, what bothers you, and then selectively customizing your journey, right? So I think that people need to look in the mirror, and I do like magnifying mirrors because I think early detection is so important. And then from there, take your time, do your research.
What should people be looking for? So say that we're looking in the mirror, we're looking in the magnifying mirror, we're looking for these early detection signs. Is this like when it comes to aging and that whole process? What are some of the first signs and some of the interventions that we can take on?
So when a person comes into my exam room, right, that is really where how I unwind the whole approach is basically the different categories, right? So that I like to look for color issues, right? Hyperpigmentation, redness. I like to look for then the fine lines and wrinkles. I think that complexion issues, sometimes you see that superimposed on fine lines and wrinkles and hyperpigmentation. Texture. That word texture has really, one of the things that is amazing is this culture of beauty, that we have to start to really select words that are mean the same thing to all of us, right? Texture, I'll give you an example. People call up and they say, I want an appointment. And we don't know what they mean by texture. Some of them have dry skin, some of them have breakouts, some of them have rashes, some of them have surface roughness. It can mean anything, right? Because basically textures means I see it on the surface of my skin. So I have to dissect like all these different things. So I then look at hydration levels, dryness. I start to look to see, I can sort of tell whether a product agrees with people or not. And then we have to then begin like, okay, for example, okay, hyperpigmentation. That's what we're seeing. And this can come with any age group, right? You can see hyperpigmentation in younger people, birth control pills, darker complexions, sun exposure, not wearing sunscreen. Um, and the propensity runs in families. There's a tendency. So those are the big categories. And they're basically the same categories as in skincare. So, what you can do professionally and what you can do with a product, knowing what ingredients to use, knowing what your skin type is super important. It's a big part of the customization. You have to hone in on what's not going to make your skin irritated, right? Or if you have sensitive skin, it's a whole nother story. And sensitive skin is a skin type. I pound that message home to all my clients. It's not just about dry skin, oily skin combo. Sensitive is a skin type. So you have to sort of know what you're looking for, which of those categories. And by the way, sometimes it's a combination of things. It's fine to have fine lines and wrinkles, laxity or crow's feet, and hyperpigmentation or large pores or occasional blemishes. Let's get it all in. That's sort of how I approach it to begin with. And then I start to create products, right? And then I start to create products that I love that are multitasking, with all this in mind. So when I create a product, I am thinking I am creating this for all skin types and for people all over the world, and I love to give benefits for primary problems and secondary problems as well. Long answer.
I would love to get into the skincare piece of it, but I'm curious first, what do most people come to you with? What are these universal concerns that you're seeing? Is it things like the texture, whatever that means? That's kind of like a nebulous term, and it has different meanings, like you're saying. Or is it the fine lines and wrinkles? Or is it a combination of everything?
Yeah. There is no question that they're all of the above. Maybe the percentage is higher for people who want to address an anti-aging regimen, starting to see fine lines and wrinkles or laxity or sun damage in the past. They're concerned, or they're starting to see it. The effects of sun are delayed. And I have so many patients in my mind who come in and they're starting to see the results of having too much sun. And I'll tell them that, and they'll say, "But I've been wearing sunscreen religiously for the last 5 years." That's just too bad, but the truth is the damage is done and it's delayed. Those free radicals that sun exposure set off years ago, decades ago, takes time to manifest. So to answer your question, I would say fine lines, wrinkles, anti-aging, and then wanting to get a jump start on things they're starting to see and things that are full blown they want to treat. But then you have all these other things. Stressful lives leads to breakouts. Lots of travel can lead to larger pores. There's people who come into the practice who are seeing redness for the first time. Is that rosacea? Is that sensitivity? You got to work that out. You got to teach them. You got to dissect it, diagnose it, and then set them on the right track.
I would love to talk about the sun exposure piece of it because I'm 39 and I am diligent about my sun protection. However, as a child of the 90s, I was a teenager in my early 20s and the early 2000s when it was, trendy to be as tan as humanly possible. And that was kind of before the era of spray tan, self-tanning. So I was in the tanning bed. I grew up in New England. I was not wearing sunscreen on the beach. And I started seeing some of that sun exposure come to the surface essentially in the last few years. And I have done a lot of lasers and things like that.
Good.
But what are some things that people can do to reverse that? Because I know that that's a common issue among a lot of followers of mine and listeners who are the same age, who had the same practices, and are now seeing some of that come to light.
Right. Okay. So if you know that the clock is ticking and that you did some damage, I think the first thing to think about is treating what you see and preventing it. Now, lots of times, treatment and prevention are the same thing. It's just a matter of the timing, right? So if you look in the mirror and you start to see crow's feet, or you raise your brow and you see fine lines and wrinkles in the forehead, and then they stick around after you bring your brow back to a normal level, your baseline level, well, that's telling you that you're going to have those lines in the future, even if you don't raise your brow. right? So you want to do things like collagen production, right? You want to, and now you have to start to understand that there are multiple ways to treat these problems. And sometimes it's not just a matter of selecting the one way you choose to go, but by getting a blend of different approaches, right? Collagen production, you can use different ingredients, you can get different lasers, you can do peels, you can do LED. And at the same time, those modalities, we'll call them different techniques to treat and build collagen, they work differently. And it's not a bad idea to cocktail, to get different ways, things you do at home, things you might go to the dermatologist office once a month or once a quarter or once every 6 months, mix it up, you know? So I would say that's the first thing to understand, right? They're additive. And it's really smart to use the different major building blocks of skincare, the pillars, and mix it in with treatments in the office, in professional settings.
What are some ways, this is a personal question, what are some ways that we can treat fine lines and wrinkles that are not Botox? So you're mentioning collagen production, skincare, LED, all of that. I got Botox poisoning a year ago, and so it's not an option for me right now. It's been a year since I've gotten it. And, I'm seeing, I don't have static lines, but I have dynamic lines, and I'm not a fan, admittedly,
Of what?
of the lines. Like
Oh,
it's
okay.
mostly like my crow's feet,
Yeah.
my eye area. I know that there are things like microneedling and
Yeah.
various lasers, but I know a lot of people are seeking out alternatives, whether it's for health issues or just not being able to afford it and the upkeep of doing it every few months. So, what are some of those things that we can do to help alleviate some of that that movement and work on collagen production?
Looking at you, the number one thing, if you haven't gotten, my team's going to get you the LED eyewear, the Eyewear Pro product. They look like goggles, and it's LED light, 3 minutes a day. LED is a game changer, and so someone like you who is not, because you would be great with Botox too, right? Do I think if you did Botox, you should still think about truly building collagen? 1,000%. That's really important because, again, Botox does slow down the wear and tear, but Botox does not build collagen, right? So you want collagen production. So that is why I love LED. We do it in the practice, and that was the inspiration for creating an at-home product. And then when we looked to really develop it, engineer it, the key thing was to make a product that was easy to use, and that translates into 3 minutes a day as opposed to 15, 18 minutes. That's unrealistic. And the key thing about LED is the skin wants treatment every single day. LED is an ingredient, right? You don't think of it as like something like a cream or a serum, but to the skin, it works through receptors, right? Which is nothing more than just a doorway, a gateway that lets it in, right? And there are receptors for it. And every ingredient has a different kind of receptor, which is why I said you want to create a cocktail of ingredients to maybe build your collagen, to firm your skin. You want to tantalize and stimulate and use all those openings, literally all those open doorways. You want to find different ways to feed the stimulation, to feed the skin cells that make collagen. So LED is an ingredient. It's a light. You can't really touch it. It has no weight, but it works through a certain mechanism that is fundamental for all ingredients. It is probably the strongest ingredient, I think, that you can use right now, looking off the top of my head. LED. I think that as long as you're willing to put in the time, which is 3 minutes a day, and by the way, you can multitask with it.
You can have your eyes open?
Yes, you can.
Wow. Game changer.
Game changer. You're right. That was key. It's snug against the skin. It releases a really good dose of LED red light, which is proven to stimulate collagen. And, you got to be patient. It's not like Botox where it kicks in the finite number of days. But you know what? You really get the reward. You start to see the results 4 weeks, definitely in 6. Those before and afters on our box are true. There's no fudging it. FDA cleared it. And that's key. That's a bona fide way. So, I have a lot of patients who are maybe they don't have the Botox poisoning story, you know, but they're just for reasons you just said. It's not. It isn't. And that's what I was trying to say earlier. You got to find out where what's in your heart. You know, people don't want a needle. They don't want something foreign injected. It's been proven to be safe over these years, you know, but what's good for you? And you have options. That's one.
Yeah. I think that red light is definitely having a moment right now, and there are so many red light products out there. So what should people be looking for in red light, and what sets yours apart from others on the market?
So LED red is first and foremost a Food and Drug Administration recognized means by which collagen production is stimulated, right? That is, and you know, say what you want, but that there, the FDA, I think, is really protecting the consumer. So the first thing I would say is look for FDA cleared, right? That means that the data and the product has been approved to make that claim. It's a big deal. Um, then after you do that, I would say you have to really look at the instructions because you got to follow the instructions, you know. And so if you're the timing, it's got to be practical. It's got to fit into your lifestyle. Some people may want to spend more than 3 minutes a day, for example. In our research, we found that in order to get people to really use it and to get the results that we promise, we had to make it easy. But maybe people want a greater experience. You know, and that's great too. But I think the FDA clearance is number one.
So that's what people should look for when it comes to, and not all red light
Not anymore.
devices have
Not
that.
anymore.
Interesting.
Uh-uh. Really important. I'm so glad we talked about this.
Mhm.
Yes, you have to really look for that on the label because red and talk about language, right? So we talk about LED, and then you segued into red.
Oh, red light.
Right. Well, are they really, really the same thing? Not really. You know, LED red light is different than the red light on a Christmas tree,
Right.
you know? And yet you start to see products that just shine a red light on your face, but they're not FDA cleared to say that they stimulate collagen.
Interesting.
Be careful.
I have a question around this as well, and it's a question that a lot of my followers ask. Skincare before you use the device, or do you do it with nothing on your skin and then do your skincare after?
Nothing on your skin.
Okay. So that
Okay.
it penetrates it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, and it's just, don't memorize, just understand it. If there's anything on your skin, it's going to block the penetration of these very delicate light rays, right? And by the way, we talk about there's a high enough energy to only make it required that you need it for 3 minutes a day. That's a function of the energy, right? But nonetheless, there's no heat. You don't feel, there's no chance of burning from LED. So it tells you that the energy, yes, it's high, but it doesn't have that kind of energy to make your skin heat up. So you put a little foundation or some sunscreen or a serum, it'll block those delicate rays. The answer is clean, dry skin
Got it.
first.
And another thing that I wanted to ask, I don't know if this is a myth. I haven't personally seen it, but people have asked me if it can affect the fat or the tissue underneath like the superficial layer of your skin in a negative way.
Not in a negative way.
Okay.
No. It goes beyond that. You know, sometimes it also, LED red light, like we have a larger mask for the entire face, right? That product is great for redness as well. You know, it's been proven to help on redness. And then the LED blue light, any complexion problem, it's you know, an at-home treatment for what we've been doing in the office for years, you know? So only healthy stuff.
Got it. Okay. I want to talk about your skincare. Skincare is such a vast industry now, and it seems like everybody is coming out with their own skincare line. How did your career inform your skincare line, and how did you go about formulating that?
Right. So, you know what? My journey began when I was like 18, even younger. So I was a science guy, and I was called a science geek, you know, and I owned it. You know, I just found science itself super fascinating. And But in those days, I mean, there were brand new frontiers in immunology, and I was actually a skin cancer researcher that my job and my passion was cells, you know, and I actually work with skin cancer cells, and I learned a lot about what the disease state is, but I also learned what the healthy state is. In other words, when you look at cells under the microscope, which was what I did, and I grew them, and then I the cells I grew were sent out to the institution I worked at. I was at Sloan Kettering here in New York City, and then those cells that I grew were then sent to all the different labs within the institution to do research on. That's how it works. And so my job was to grow them and to make them what I called happy. And then I explored all the science and the nutritional things and the heat that was necessary, the right optimal physiologic levels of oxygen and CO2 and nutritional things. And I got a knack for it, and that started my journey. And then I went into dermatology, because I wanted to really care for patients. I love the lab, but I needed that human connection. And then from there, the key thing, I think, the reason I'm so fortunate is because I learned from my journey to be creative in science, which is a whole different tangent. It's like science is not just memorization, but when you do research and you have that exposure to expanding knowledge, to doing exploration, and to learning things that were not understood or that existed conceptually, at that moment, you're creative. And so that's sort of what I then applied to skincare. And that's what we're known for. We're known for results and very clinical. And that is how it's the combination of what I see in my practice and one-on-one with people who have issues and stories, and then selecting how to customize and how to create products that then are universal. In other words, the peel pads, the alpha beta peel was my first,
iconic product.
my first, right. That was my first hit, like a Rolling Stones song. And that was an example. No one thought of a two-step peel, right? But it made no sense to do, because a one-step peel is really just a strong exfoliator, right? A peel, chemical peel, and that word chemical and peel is still scary to people, but that's where two steps comes in. And that was my first, my first real creation. And it was a first application of creativity and an understanding and an awareness, and simple to use at home. And the results were great. But believe me, when I told people in the day that, no, you're not going to get red, you're not going to see visible flaking, it's a micro peel, slow and steady does it. You need two steps. The pushback I got from editors, who said, "Are you crazy? There's no redness, no downtime. You expect me to believe I'm not going to get results?" It's great. And now it's the opposite, right? But told you.
How long ago was that?
That was 20 years ago.
20 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
So you were way ahead the times.
Yeah. And then since then, we created one for, gentle version of it, and it's for people with sensitive skin or for pregnant women. And then we have one that's extra strength for the real people who have oily skin, or whose skin's been customized to skincare ingredients, who want the stronger results. There's 7 acids as opposed to 3, and then the intermediate strength, which has a universal, has 5 acids in it. So we created one for each skin type, and that was when it really took off.
What are the foundational ingredients that we should all be using in our skincare routines?
I would say I do. So the alpha and beta hydroxy acids, love those.
How often?
I think daily. Now,
Okay.
Daily does it. The skin, just like LED, it's like, how often should you be eating right and exercising, right? I'd say every day. Skin isn't just another organ. It's the same kind of needs and personality as any other organ in the body. So that's number one. Number two, we talked about LED. That's a device. That's tech. That is the gateway to results that are even better. Vitamin C. Love vitamin C. I think vitamin C is truly like nature's gift to the human race. It has an incredible ability to work on hyperpigmentation. It's an antioxidant that helps reverse the free radicals from sun from years ago, or that just happens to occur just by normal living, just the normal life. As we sit here and breathe and digest, as a byproduct of all that, we're creating free radicals, which is partly why we age as we live. So antioxidants like vitamin C, great. Topically applied. I think it's a good idea to have it in your diet, but the amount you can put in a topical product is much greater than you can really get by taking a 500 milligram pill, which gets diluted into your 6-quart circulation system that's absorbed by every organ in the body. And what's left to really go on the skin, that the skin really sees, is actually not as much as you can get from a 15% L-ascorbic product, which is one of my favorites. So vitamin C, love retinol. Retinol, great. You gotta use it judiciously. You definitely need sunscreen. Definitely apply it at night. Use it when you're ready. It's not the first go-to ingredient, I'd say, for people. I don't love it for 15-year-olds, to be honest. But retinol is really in the hit parade. Hyaluronic acid. Now that ingredient, first of all, I think that it's not just about the ingredients, it's about the delivery. And so what we've discovered was that hyaluronic acid is something that comes in different sizes, also known as molecular weights. So we can sort of make the different sizes, and we did this like in our Derm Infusions lip product that gives you this plumping effect. The whole secret to our Derm Infusions category is multiple sized hyaluronic acid molecules that have the ability to literally descend layer by layer into the skin to give you a full, beautiful internal hydration and plumping and bounce and elasticity. So that is one of the key ingredients, but now it's how you deliver it too that matters. That's a lot of the science. And that goes back to the research I did, early in my career.
Does everybody need a moisturizer as well?
You know what? A moisturizer, everyone needs a moisturizer. They need the right one though. I think there really is a super great benefit to keeping the skin in balance. But there are different types of moisturizers. I'm an advocate of oil-free, for example, for people who have complexion problems or who have large pores. Or if it's really hot and muggy out, you might want to switch it up to something lighter weight. And then there are people who, no matter what the season is, at night they want that really thick, heavy moisturizer. Great. But I love moisturizers.
Mm-hmm. What about oils?
Oils,
you said oil-free moisturizer, but
right. So, right. I personally, looking at the data, and we can go over the data, but I like oil-free for people with complexion concerns and larger pores, right? They already are producing an oil that's a little bit too heavy for their own good. So instead of flowing, their oils can get a little bit waxy, a little bit thick, and cause congestion. So an external application of an oil in that individual might not be a great thing, right? However, there are people who have had, by the way, sun damage. I hate that word damage, but you know what I mean, right? Sun exposure to a detrimental level is certainly a way to hurt the moisture barrier later in life. And there are people with chronically dry skin, and their skin can't create as much internal hydration or lock it in as well. So customizing your moisturizer is really key. But it's super important to keep your skin in balance, which is, I am a big believer in that. I don't like anything that causes, dry skin for sure, but also interruption of the moisture barrier, downtime. I don't love aggressive lasers, for example. I never loved aggressive peels. I like daily approach and getting a job done little by little.
Yeah, I think so many people have the approach. I don't know how it is in New York, but at least in LA, where they want the in-office procedures, the invasive lasers, the invasive peels, the Botox, the fillers. And then in the in-between, they're not necessarily taking care of their skin. Whereas I've had so many experts on the show who have said it's really what you're doing on a daily basis, like what you were saying. And then those other things should be, used conservatively, kind of as the cherry on top. What are some lasers that you do like? Because this is a question that I get all the time from my
Right.
followers. I have a lot of people who are in my age range, maybe 40s, starting to see different concerns. Like
Yeah.
we've talked about fine lines and wrinkles, but also the laxity and also the sun damage, coming out. So what do you like for that?
So in my practice, some of the heroes, right, that we do is one laser called M22, which is a combo. I love combo lasers. That's just like ingredients that are cocktailed, which has been my approach from day one, is to cocktail lasers. And so it's the IPL laser mixed with something called Resurfix. And so it helps with uneven skin tones and redness and hyperpigmentation, and it causes a firming effect on the skin, right? And the downtime, really none, you know. So that to me is a great one. And you have to, if you're talking about skin tone issues, hyperpigmentation, redness, you have to sort of gauge it, and you have to talk to the person, because then you have XLV laser, which is a stronger laser that can give you a little bit of downtime. And sometimes, you know what, people just want one and done, and if it's safe for them after they're assessed, great. That's another really good one. I really am loving Secret Pro, which is the radio frequency laser delivered through microneedling. I like microneedling, I really do, but microneedling is really used as a delivery system in that particular laser. So the needles they're microscopic, they just penetrate, and through that opening, once they're at that level into the skin, like just below maybe into the top layer of the dermis, radio frequency comes in, which makes it more beneficial than just radio frequency alone or microneedling alone. CO2 laser, tried and true, but I don't love high dose CO2, which is, I think, what you're saying is big in LA. And it's not that different from people who will say that some particular food, gluten or something nutritional, triggers my rosacea, even though when you do the research, there really is no data, But do I know everything? No. And if that person is made that correlation, I say more power to you. Live your life that way. But CO2, that's really aggressive, that causes a downtime. If you think about it, it's generating free radicals. There's no organ in the body where you ever would say, let's injure it for the sake of it coming back stronger and better, right? I'm doing a 5K race, and I'm going to do something that makes me cough.
Yeah.
What? So that's how I feel about those invasive lasers.
Interesting. That's a perspective that I haven't really heard, and it makes perfect sense. I mean, yeah, injure it to make it come back stronger.
There is some data, by the way, but the theory, in fairness, there is a stimulation of a type of collagen that's sort of like scar tissue, but and that's where the benefit comes in for those who see it. But for me, I think that just listening to people, I'm a New York dermatologist, right? I can say that I've heard people say repeatedly that, the dark spots came back and the promise was so big, and at the same time, and I believe me, there are a lot of happy people and they do the Fraxel, and I just say, go stay with it. But there are people who I think have a gentle approach that they prefer.
Yeah, and a lot of it largely depends on your body's own ability to heal, and everybody is individual when it comes to that. So it's kind of hard to say that it's just a universal one size fits all.
Correct. That's the key. You love it, stay with it. But no, there's alternatives.
Have you seen dysmorphia when it comes to people's perceptions of themselves, and when it comes to things like Botox and filler?
Oh my God.
I know that, beauty standards and just trends with social media and everything's filtered, and it's hard to distinguish, what's real and what's not. And then we're seeing ourselves constantly. We weren't seeing ourselves, 10 years ago. I talk about this in my own life when Instagram stories came out, whenever that was 7, 8 years ago. And suddenly I was seeing my face on video. I'd never seen it before. I was like, huh, I noticed things that I had never noticed before. One being I had really heavy brows. I had hooded eyes naturally, and it never bothered me until I saw it. And at the time, I was in my early 30s, I guess, and I looked tired and sad all the time. And I got a brow lift. Had that not come out, had I not been seeing myself, I don't know that I would have noticed that at that time, maybe 10 years later, I don't know. But how have you seen that in your practice?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So this is a really important responsibility that I think I have as a practicing dermatologist. And I think that in general, given this microphone here, I will say that there is a responsibility that it's a slippery slope, and that people sometimes they don't know what's best for them. And the one thing that I have found that's really been powerful is saying no. I don't think you need it. And by the way, that is how I built my practice. If I think it's not the right move, or I think it's, I don't necessarily recommend doing Botox and filler the same day, for example. Or if you're going to do laser, let's see where that gets you before we go and start you on um, something else. I've had lips are in, and I've had patients. I've had 15-year-old, 14-year-old girls coming into my office, young women coming into my office who want this and that, and literally will show me a photo of somebody. I love her lips. I want her lips. And by the way, not always is it something that is like reasonable. What does that mean? Reasonable. I think that, you know, you never, lots of people are not going to be privy to the conversation that's being had by people who are looking at them. And I hear this, I hear that too. So I have to protect them from that. And there is, more, better, faster kind of approach to that. So saying no is important. And also being, instead of doing 2 syringes of filler, maybe we should do 1. Instead of doing a heavy filler, maybe we should do a lighter weight, see how you feel about it, how you look. Because, there's this whole movement of reversing filler now, taking it down with the enzyme that disintegrates it. You can do that, but why would you want to go all that way to only to regret it, spend all that money, come back and then undo it? It also gives you a bad start because done right, these treatments can be beautiful. But then you get a sort of like, a bad experience, and then you can maybe say, I'm not going to do it for the rest of my life. And maybe you should think about doing it later in life. So it's a big responsibility, and I think that culturally it's really important to have this honest conversation. Because sometimes people just don't know what's best for them, and they're really asking for an honest opinion. And I think lots of times, the industry is just saying, let's do more, let's do this. And that's not me.
Are there any innovations that you see coming down the pipeline that we may not be aware of, or things that are kind of starting to make their way into the industry that you think will be beneficial? I know like exosomes are really popular right now, peptides, things like that.
Yes. Okay. So the first thing is, so I have an incredible team, and we read a lot, we look at the data, and we're constantly exploring, and I'm seeing and listening to the patients in my practice. And I'm also looking at what's published. My first response, and everyone knows this, is show me the data, right? Let's see what the research shows. You can't go wrong with creating products that have really good clinical studies. So I think that there's some exciting things. I do think that there's a difference between, as I mentioned, delivery and actual ingredients, right? So we have this category of product called derm infusions, and there's a new one that's it's a blur cream that people are seeing being launched now. It's a matte finish moisturizer that still hydrates your skin, which has been that you sacrifice hydration for that matte finish, which I never loved, and it took us years to get the right formula, and we did. But it's the delivery of ingredients that matters too, right? And you've heard this term delivery systems, right? That is really like what's under the hood of a car. You see the beautiful car, I want this, it drives beautifully, but what's going on is really, it's important to understand that how you create the formula is also super important. And there's a lot of technology and innovation that the German infusions category, for example, has really tapped into hyaluronic acid, you know? Um, so I think that one of the most important things with that product line for me is, what about people who don't want fillers? What about, and hyaluronic acid's what's used in fillers, right? Or what about people who would love to get fillers a little less often, or who've had fillers a couple months ago who want to top it off and keep it fresh looking? So I'm seeing this place in skincare that is overlapping with in-office treatments to accentuate them or slow the need down or replace them altogether. Not everyone wants injections. So so taking the same ingredient and putting in a skincare product is one big new dimension that I'm loving. Um, Another example, and I think that you ask peel every day, you know, peels, when you change the pH from step 1 to step 2 in the alpha beta peel, there's a real scientific event that's going on that has a profound effect, which is why peels have been done by dermatologists literally for decades. But now we're also finding that retinol in the form of like a peel, when used as a booster to the alpha beta hydroxy peels, there's this thing called synergy, right? And that's a really important concept that I think is the next step too. And what is synergy? Synergy is when you use two different products and 1 + 1 = 3, right? There's an acceleration of effect that comes from the combination of different kinds of ingredients and products. And so we have this I've found, and now we're touting it and getting great results by using a retinol boosting perfectly dosed pad twice a week mixed in with the alpha beta peel. And the skin loves that because you're getting different effects. We talk about receptors and all that stuff, different receptors, different mechanisms. And when it all comes together, you start to see results that you would otherwise go to a practice or a treatment center to get, and you don't really need to as much or at all anymore. People want that. It's my job to deliver the best possible results using the most cutting edge innovations that we can put together and still be safe for all skin types, and to do that for people. So that's just another example. And then you add things like LED, et cetera.
Amazing. Well, I think that I can rely on you for all of my my no Botox alternatives, because I mean that's exactly what I know myself and so many people are looking for. These alternatives to in practice treatments, either to space them out or be able to transition away from doing them and still have great looking skin and slow down that aging process.
Totally. Complexion too, if I had to say like another thing that really does need everyday attention is any complexion problem, and that is something that, people can't come in as often to get a professional treatment when they're breaking out. And I'm not talking about full blown acne necessarily, like where you would have to be. The word acne, I think, talk about language. There are people who hear the word acne and say, "Oh, but I don't need Accutane," Well, that's not. You're right. But any blemish concern, I think, really needs to have attention daily. And there, by the way, I mean, back to what we do in our shop is we create skincare products, understanding that as common as acne is, it is a complicated disorder, a complicated condition. And it's not just about like that pore that sits on top. It's all about the inflammation and the bacteria, and then the redness and some people they get these bumpy breakouts and they want things to put on there fast to bring it down. Talk about photos, that's heartbreaking when you see yourself in a photo and you couldn't cover it up with makeup. So we're attentive to complexion problems, and there the technology in our formulas. Really, it's not just like it takes literally 12 ingredients, I think, what we put in the products to treat and prevent breakouts. Because the breakout you see today actually started 2 weeks ago, which means that what you're destined to get in 2 weeks is percolating under the skin right now invisibly. So the idea is to get ahead of it, you know. So spot treatment, good for the bad ones, but solutions done daily is the way to really get ahead of it and then use different ingredients for the different components of breakouts is also really important. I'm thinking that's another big frontier that we crossed.
Amazing. Well, tell everybody where they can get your products and follow along.
Okay.
with you.
Right. So okay. First of all, we have our products full. Everything's in Sephora's all across the country. We're launching worldwide. I know, I'm sure people are listening to you all over the world. And we are rolling it out. You can also get it on our website, drdennisgrossskincare.com. And information about my practices on dennisgrossmd.com. And stay tuned because we're really, I enjoy these conversations because I do understand how important it is for people to get the best picture of what's going on and to make decisions for themselves. And there's a lot. And by the way, we are living in the golden age right now. What we're doing now compared to what we can do from 10 years ago, you talked about peptides, amazing, you know, back to dermafusions, it's in there, the science yielded it. But it's exciting, you know, so I hope people aren't bumming out thinking they're seeing things because now there's so much you can do. It's just about really getting the right ingredients and knowing what you need and having that moment of just education and good science.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that with us and sharing an optimistic viewpoint of it all, because I know it does get really overwhelming. So, you know, episodes like this, I know are so helpful for my audience. And, you know, really it's like you can scale it back. I think everyone thinks you have to be doing the most, and it's not necessarily about that. It's about doing the right things.
100%. And don't forget multitasking. You know, I will tell you that one of the most pleasurable things I do is when I create a product, I know that people are going to get this product for the primary reason it's being marketed and developed. But when you put in secondary benefits, right, immediate results, you know, radiance. And so if you're looking for something that, whatever it is, you know, immediate results will always be seen in the way we formulate. And then hyperpigmentation, if you have a little bit of that problem while you're treating your breakouts or your fine lines, we're going to put ingredients in there. We even put ingredients, by the way, that have built-in water softeners, you know, because hard water is a thing. And so very little fanfare, we put ingredients in there that have that effect to bring down calcium levels in the water systems that you may be washing your face with, for example.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you thought of everything.
We're still working on everything, but we got a lot of good stuff.
Thank you so much for coming.
Happy to help.